This week, we have dibs on Steve Dolinsky. You know him from ABC 7 from 2003 to 2021. He's now on NBC News as the food guy since then. He also was the co host of the Feed podcast with Chef Rick Bayless, podcast award winner, respect. James Beard Award in 2015, one of 13 that you currently have. So nice. He's the author of Pizza City, 101 Reasons Why Chicago is America's Greatest Pizza Town, 2018. And during that process, you went to how many pizza places?
But 186,
In 6 months.
6 months. Yep.
And you're not 700.
So
So,
it was the Lord's work, is what it was.
So, Steve, you obviously have been in the Chicago food scene for years and have reported on it. And like you just said, went to 186 pizza restaurants. What made you get into food?
It's kind of a long story. I guess we have time. I had a sister-in-law. My brother's wife was from Tasmania, and she was really into food at a time when it was before the term foodie. This was probably back in the 80s, and I was just a kid who grew up in a kosher home in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Very limited menu, lots of brown, overcooked, starchy things in our kitchen. Pretty bland. And she turned me on to the joys and wonders of all that is out there that I'd been missing, um, from Italian to Thai to Vietnamese and so forth. And so I had this passion with food sort of from junior high school on. I went to school in Madison at UW Madison, and started exploring places there along State Street. You know, a little Indian Nepalese place. There's a Thai place I used to go to just outside of town, and this just kept feeding my interest. And when I got into television, there was no such thing as a food reporter, right? This was in the 90s. The Food Network started in 94. And I did some general assignment news reporting in Upper Michigan. I was in the Quad Cities for about a year. I came to Chicago to help launch CLTV in 93. And I was just doing food reporting. I'm sorry, just doing news reporting, really disliking it. And right place, right time, 1995, literally 30 years ago this month, they announced they were going to launch a show called Good Eating at the Tribune, which was gonna mirror the Chicago Tribune's food section. So it used to be called the Food Guide, and it came out on Thursdays, but it was going to be Good Eating coming out on Wednesdays. And they wanted their sister station, CLTV, to create some kind of a weekly half-hour TV version of that food section. And I volunteered. I raised my hand. I'm like, I'm happy to stop being a news reporter and just produce this food show because they already had a host chosen. It was a weather guy we had at our station, and did that for a year and loved it. You know, working with the Chicago Tribune's food staff every day almost, creating a weekly show that never had a rerun. So if you can imagine 52 shows a year for 8 years. And then in the second year, I took over as the host. The host took a job somewhere else. So I took over as the host and the producer in 96. And that was it. I mean, I knew that I would be doing food the rest of my life.
you said you took over in 96. I'm curious, at that point, you said you're the host and the producer. That sounds to me, especially with like a low budget CLTV thing, very guerrilla style. Were you also doing your own editing, like in the field, building your, like setting up all your own equipment and everything?
Yeah, well, we had one full-time camera operator, Nelson Howard, who now works WGN, and we had a part-time director who would do some editing, but Nelson and myself were responsible for editing all the packages and all the stories. Yeah, so it was very much guerrilla. I mean, I had no producer. I was producing, field producing, and then reporting and doing some things, on camera because I had that experience. So that really, boy, paved the way for what I do now. I mean, I think about that all the time, doing that one man band when I was in Upper Michigan, teaching myself how to produce and shoot and edit, and then changing the subject matter from news to food because it was something I really cared about and loved. And I still do that today.
When you think about the Chicago food scene, and it obviously has changed so much, but there's those key neighborhoods, I feel like, that are kind of known for where you want to go out or where some of the best restaurants are. What are those neighborhoods? What are the first few that pop into mind for you?
Well, I think Logan Square for sure, as much as it still kind of associates with hipsters and skinny jeans and tattoos, I still feel like there's a lot of energy in Logan Square. A lot of people will try things in a small storefront. They can still afford something on a side street or even on North Milwaukee Avenue. Avondale is another great neighborhood. That's kind of what Logan Square was probably 15 years ago. And Avondale is kind of the new frontier as we move further northwest away from the city. And I think Albany Park has always been just a great food destination for me. Kedzie, Lawrence, between really Lawrence, Kedzie between Lawrence and like Irving is a great area for little restaurants that you just you're not going to see kind of on the main drags anywhere, but they're going to be snuck into a side street or a strip mall. And I find some of the best eating in those strip malls in those three neighborhoods probably.
When I know that we have a lot of different awards and people come in from out of town, you have different colleagues who are in the same field. Mallory and I were talking before we came on about the idea of when someone's coming in from out of town who does what you do, how much, what's the kind of place that you're looking to take them? And if you're going to show off something new and special in the city, like what's your idea of how to show off to someone who does what you do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I remember years ago when I met Nigella Lawson at one of her book events, I was excited to take her to a VEC because a VEC had just opened, and that's one of my favorite restaurants. And I was describing it to her, and her eyes kind of glazed over, and she's like, "Yeah, we get sort of Mediterranean flavors, where I live. I want a steak, I want a sausage, I want something of the terroir of Chicago, if you will." So like when I have critics that come to town, we usually go to Superdog, just because. I mean, why the hell wouldn't you take somebody to Superdog? I don't necessarily go to Jim's Original as much for a Polish, although I'm happy to do that. But that's another just a real Chicago thing. I will probably go to Johnny's Beef, even though technically it's not Chicago. It's Elmwood Park. But I think so much of their beefs, and I'll do a pizza because they want pizza, but I'll probably take them to My Pie. It's really, I think My Pie is probably the best example of an OG deep dish, really what it was in the 40s. Because even though My Pie came along in 71, the founder, Larry Aronson, who's still alive today in his 80s, he got the idea from going to Uno's and Due's as a kid in the 40s and 50s. So it's really his version of what he remembers from those pizzas, but without he reformulated the sauce, I think, basically changed it up a little bit. But I'll take him to My Pie for sure for a pizza. I'll probably take him now to Pizza Amici, new place on Grand Avenue, rather than schlepping 45 minutes to Vito and Nick's for a tavern style. I mean, I did have a guy in town this week and took him to lunch at Vito and Nick's, but it's an hour and a half round trip.
Right.
But then we did go to Amici on the way home because it's near my house. I wanted to see old school, new school. But I think it's crucial if you take if somebody's in Chicago and they care about food, they want to learn about the landscape, you got to show them an old school deep dish and an old school, or at least maybe a new school tavern style. Those are my two go-tos. For stuffed, yeah, I mean, I could take them to Nancy's or Angelo's, but that's not usually a priority in terms of that style for them.
I feel like I currently live in New York. I just moved here, but when people talk about Chicago, they always say like, "Oh, you must eat a lot of steak." I'm like, "Yes, I know my way around a filet pretty well, but Chicago is so much more than the steakhouses." Why do you think people still only, maybe it's changed in recent years, but for so long, people really just thought steakhouses equaled Chicago, and we didn't really have a lot more like cultural cuisines within the city?
Well, in some ways it hasn't changed, Mallory. It's unfortunate because, but the reason why is the Union Stockyards. I mean, that's the reason why. It was for 100 years, on the South Side. Um, Companies like Swift and Armour started here, and beef was just the thing in Chicago, kind of like it is in Kansas City. When you go to those towns, you need to have a steakhouse experience. So listen, we're still the Midwest. I always think about like, Chicago is this world-class city, and to your point, we have expanded since those days. Charlie Trotter really set the stage for us, and then Grant Achatz, Paul Kahn, all these great chefs we have that have elevated our culinary scene. But we're not an international city like New York City or LA, where we have people from all over the world coming and moving here. We have people from Des Moines and La Crosse and Minneapolis, like me, and Indianapolis. So moving here, a lot of times from Big Ten universities. So they're not craving pinchos, or tapas from Spain. They're not craving Southeast Asian food or Korean food like they are in LA. So beef is still very familiar to most of us that moved to Chicago, and that's just I think it's just such a part of our DNA. And certainly they wouldn't keep opening if they weren't doing good business. I don't understand, frankly, how they do it. All the competition right now and all the talk about how prices are rising, not just for labor but for food. I mean, you can't get a decent prime graded aged steak for less than $60 probably. So it's $150 check average for sure if you go to a steakhouse. I tend to send people to Boof House in Ukrainian Village, which is I think one of the best steakhouses anywhere. But it's a neighborhood place. They still cook in cast iron, kind of the French method, with herbs and garlic cloves. But it's still the same dry aged steak you're going to get anywhere else downtown. It's just not as douchey.
Will say real fast before Nick asks the next question. I probably 7 years ago decided that that was going to be the year I tried every top steakhouse in Chicago and started to rank them. And I would order the same kind of steak, the same kind of sides to kind of compare. People thought I was nuts, but I was like, there's so many out there. I really want to know, like,
But there
where's
aren't. But I'm sorry, I'm going to push back on that. I'm going to say that's like doing hot dogs in Chicago. Now, when I did my pizza survey, 186 places or so, there's a lot of variation in crust recipes. I mean, that's typically it, right? You're ordering pepperoni from the same two places. You're ordering your bulk sausage from the same handful of places. Maybe you're roasting the vegetables in house to change things up, but the crust is so varied in all these places. Hot dogs, you're ordering from Vienna Beef for all the hot dogs. You're ordering from Rosen's for the buns. Nobody's making the condiments themselves. They're ordering the relish. Maybe they're chopping onions, but there's not a lot of variation. So to your point with steaks, if you're buying from a supplier like back in the day, it would have been Union Stockyards or Allen Brothers. They're all dry aging the same steaks, and they're just shipping them to the same 8 or 9 steakhouses. The difference is with the sides, right? Like maybe you judge it on the quality of the potatoes that they offer or the spinach versions. But with steakhouses, they're very similar. They're buying from the same supplier, and they're not. The only difference is dry aged or wet aged, right? So is it sitting in a cryovac chamber in a bag that's wet aging it from the inside out, or are they dry aging it and hanging it, aging it from the outside in, where you have to cut away that outside, that crust that forms the bacteria, and that's what concentrates the flavors in a steak. So that could be a difference, wet age, dry age. But honestly, there's not a lot of difference or variation, I don't think, in steakhouses. You'd have more variation with burgers than you would with a steak roundup.
Well, I will say when I did this, I wasn't eating burgers at the time. I've now converted, so I'm a big fan. Maybe I'll try this again. But I will say probably one of the top steakhouses people love to go with. I was so disappointed with, and I've never been back.
Tell
And
me, which one? Come on.
but the Chicago Cut,
Oh,
100.
yeah, that's polarizing.
they didn't cook the steak well. They were trying to squeeze so many people in. The whole experience for what it costs, I was like, you know what? Just to say you have a reservation here, it's not worth the check.
Yeah, a lot of athletes go there. A lot of attorneys that work in the building go there. It's a lot of sort of big dollar, a lot of ballers, with the money. But yeah, I agree. I'd rather send somebody to Bevet's
Yep.
or Booth House. Yeah,
Well, I wanted to ask you because you've brought up a few times now, pizza and the hot dogs. We're coming up on, NFL playoff season and everything. And it always makes me think of when you're watching the coverage of a game and they do the shot over the city. And then there's usually the close up of some towns, local cuisine with Chicago. It's almost always somebody at Lou Malnati's or Uno taking a deep dish out of the oven and doing the pie flip. And then we get the obligatory thing. I'm curious, as a guy who is immersed in Chicago food scene, what do you want them to start showing? What would you like people to evolve? What Chicago, yeah, pizza, hot dogs, Italian beef, it's all that. But what do you think we should be known for now beyond the stereotypical staples?
it would be really cool if they showed on those teasers or bumpers something from the fine dining world because that is something that doesn't really exist in other cities in America like it does here. I mean, there's Vespertine in LA, sure. There's 11 Madison Park in New York, sure. But we've got Alinea and Ever and Oriole and Smith and on, all these amazing tasting menu restaurants. But again, I understand that the audience for football could give a shit about, the tasting menus. But I would suggest an Italian beef for sure. That is actually more Chicago than a steak or a pizza. I mean, the Italian beef is something that was born and bred here. And frankly, nobody knows how to do it anywhere else in the country. Believe me, I've had them. They're terrible. You don't put cheese on it, by the way. That's what they do in Philadelphia. I'm so sick of people putting cheese on Italian beef sandwiches. It does not belong on a beef. I'd go to Johnny's. I mean, or Al's for God's sakes, or
Preach,
even though
brother.
I hate to say this, but Portillo's. I mean, just I'd rather see a beef on those bumpers than another shot of pizza. If you're gonna show a pizza, again, I know when they come to town, they don't want to schlep all over the place. They've got to go somewhere that's 5 minutes from their hotel because they got to get to the stadium. But go to Bucktown, go to My Pie, see Rich Aronson pull a deep dish out of the oven in his really aged cast iron steel pans.
Or, if the national crew came to town and contacted their local affiliate and maybe reached out to them and like, hey, what should we actually show? That could also help. But there's an arrogance about national coverage.
Yeah, it is unbelievable.
You mentioned Italian beef as a uniquely Chicago thing. As we were preparing for this interview, I begged Mallory to do a whole thing on this. I love Italian beefs. I think that if you're going to go out and have lunch with people who are from out of town, it's not pizza, it's not a hot dog. You can get that anywhere. And Chicago style stuff has been transported everywhere. But a good garlicky, spicy, salt, the right level of peppers, the right level of want it dipped. I think if you actually have to dip the sandwich, chances are it's not a great sandwich. I think that you want the juice in there, but you want to appreciate what makes it. It's not necessarily who's the best. When Steve Dolinsky is out and he's somewhere local and he's going to try it, what do you look for to me right away to know this is going to be decent? This is a good Italian beef.
So first of all, it sounds like you're a 2 spoon of juice guy. You're not a dipped, you're not a baptized, you're not a juicy, you're not a wet. You're like a 2 spoon of juice because you want to get some of the juice on there. 2 spoons of juice on it would be just enough. So your order should be 2 spoon of juice. I look for thinly sliced beef. That a lot of guys don't get this right. They slice it too thick. They don't let it cool enough and slice it on the mechanical slicer. They all put them on the mechanical slicer. Obviously, nobody does it by hand. That would be crazy. But it's got to be prepared and cooked properly with the garlic and the oregano and the spices. But then it's got to be cooled enough so that when they slice it, they can slice it thin. It should be super duper paper thin. When it's too thick, it's going to be too chewy. That's a big problem. So I look for that. You can no longer look for a bread variation because Ganella no longer sells bread. They sell it frozen and wholesale only. So chances are it's going to be a Toronto or a Laborio. Laborio I prefer, but that's rarely seen. The last time I saw it was in the original Mr. Beef in where the hell? Way southwest in the suburbs. But Laborio in like Franklin Park is a great bread. And then I want to look for even distribution of my sweet and hot. So 98% of the time when you ask for a beef sweet, it's going to be a hunk of green bell pepper that's been steamed. And I don't know why they do that. Well, A, it's lazy, but B, it's just much easier. And I don't know if you're supposed to like take a bite of that separately while you're eating the beef. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's hard to get it in each bite because it's only going to be maybe 3 inches long. And so I want that beef sweet to be evenly chopped peppers and probably onions like they do at Johnny's. And then the hot part of it should be a great jardinera, not too much oil. I take issue with Al's. I don't like that deep red oil that they have on their hot. I prefer Johnny's. I'm sure they all use like a Graziano's or a Countryside type of jardinera out of the jar. Nobody really makes it themselves unless you're Kevin Hickey at the Duck Inn. But I'm looking for that even distribution, right? So when I see a hunk of bell pepper and I see thick slices of beef, I don't even bother ordering it. But again, my order is beef, sweet, hot, juicy.
So you just mentioned like Mr. Beef, and we can't talk to you without talking about the bear. Obviously, it
Really?
started. gotta a little bit because I feel like last season really started to show a lot of like the great restaurants, like you said, Ever and About, like there, and then the chefs. There was that episode where they were all talking. When you now see that, and now there's like food tours of like where to go, and like some places that used to be like hole in the walls, you can't even get in anymore because they've been featured. Do you feel like that show helped elevate Chicago's food scene to like the rest of the country?
Absolutely, without a doubt. Season two was such a great love letter to Chicago. I really took pride in season two. I wish I would have written that. I mean, man, I it was just so great. It just felt like, you were in the city. Obviously, a local wrote it and produced it, and so I took a lot of pride in season two. And even the beginning of season three, there was a nice montage of the city and some of the places to eat. It does bother me that you can't get into some of the places now. I mean, Kasama was already busy, but now it's just insane 3 hour wait. And even like Pizza Lobo, it's a good pizza place, but now it's very difficult to get in there. Good that they shouted out to Margie's, good that they shouted out to, Donnie Medea and his places. And I love Rob Levitt at Public and Quality Meats. So, yeah, I think they did a great job and it did elevate Chicago. And God bless the people who are entrepreneurs who created a bear themed food tour. I mean, we've been doing pizza tours for 7 years here, but good for them. I mean, I think it's great. It's all good. It raises the playing field. It doesn't just pigeonhole us as pizza, right? 'Cause I'm so sick of hearing about how we're just a one note town with pizza. And so, yeah, if they can bring in and have the chefs conversation, talking, bringing Grant Achatz in, talking to some of the better chefs in town. That's really that's what our city is about.
I used to live off of Chicago Avenue, and Lao Pingyu was like my go-to spot. And
Yeah.
flying back in tonight, trust me, I'll be hitting it up this weekend. And after that first season came out, it was forever like long waits, and it was great for them. But at the same time, some of these places they used to be able to pick up and go and not have to worry about a wait started to blow up, which is great for the chefs and the restaurant and those who work. But when it's like your local spot that you like to pick up, it kind of messes you up a little bit.
Paradise Pub
Listen,
experience being on diners, drive-ins, and dives, where I used to love going there. It was one of my dad's old clients, and they were on TV, I think, once. And as a result of that, the line now for that place, Paradise Pub on River Road.
of course.
The line now is, I believe, wraps around the parking lot at around noon on a nice day. So
Yeah, I mean the Hungry Hound was there too back in the day before Sunglass Guy. So yeah, but but again, our job is to tell people about places where to go eat, right? And these places, if they deserve it, they deserve it. Like they should, there should be a line. I think it's great. But yeah, it does sort of suck if you're the local and you've been going there and it's your secret place. Like I will hear from people online after I feature a place sometimes in a random strip mall. Oh, thanks a lot, Dolinsky. Now I can't get into my place. Like, well, my job is to tell people like where to go eat.
those are like bitter Blackhawks fans. They win a Stanley Cup, and suddenly people want to buy tickets, and the diehards are going, "Well, now my stadium's full, and tickets." You wanted them to win and become popular. This is what happens when that happens. You like your restaurant. You want it to survive. This has to happen for them to survive. It's just
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in fact, and especially these days, they need to be busy because I am telling you, I just heard from a guy last night. He has more than 50 employees, which means he has to give 2 weeks, paid time off, and they're paying servers like $29-30 an hour and dishwashers, and it's really expensive running a restaurant right now. Eggs are through the roof, right? So you want these guys to be busy.
when you're talking about the labor costs. Have you noticed lately a push from restaurateurs to make sure that their staffs are better paid, to make sure that they stay, because there was such a high turnover after COVID, and a lot of these restaurants were really struggling, and also struggling to keep staff and retain staff? Have you noticed any change in how staffs are being treated?
They're treated much better. Yep. One example would be Bistronomic in River North or the North Side. Martial Nugier, French chef there. They don't seat past 9 o'clock. Like they want their people to go home by 11 o'clock at night. They don't do brunch. I think they give them the Sunday off. Like they want to treat people well. They want them to be happy. because they know how hard it is to find good people, and they're willing to pay a dishwasher 29, $30 an hour if they have to, because they just know that if they can't find somebody to do it, they have to do it themselves. So yeah, they're being treated much better. I think the COVID was just such a good thing for the industry in some ways, where we got rid of the sort of the bad actors, and they realized that you can't treat people like shit. But yes, the flip side is that people are not going back to that industry, and it's much harder to find qualified staff.
So you and Chef Rick Bayless had a podcast you guys co-hosted called the Feed Podcast that ran from 2014 to 2019. And I would say those years you guys were probably some of the first podcasts really out there, more or less. What made you guys decide to start a show, but then also why did you end up stopping it?
Very simple answers. We started it because we pitched WBEZ, public radio here, where I used to work part-time for 10 years as a food reporter. We pitched them on a food show because we thought Chicago needs a food show on public radio, and they balked and they just didn't want to do it, weren't interested. So we said, let's just start a podcast. Screw them. And so we started the feed in 2014, very humble beginnings. And then we got up to a weekly show. We would tape 5 or 6 shows on a Monday because that's Rick's day off. And that would last us for a month and a half. And then we would get together on a Monday. I mean, it was really a lot of planning and production. And yeah, we had a great following and I loved doing it. And then COVID came and then that was it. He shifted into survival mode and feeding staff and feeding people. And there's just no way in hell we could possibly do it. And then, by the time we recovered 2 years later, it's like we'd lost the momentum. So yeah, it's too bad. It was a lot of fun. It was a great show.
You've won 13 James Beard Awards. What exactly are these awards?
What are they? They are sort of the Academy Awards of the food world. They are hugely respected in the industry. I mean, they're I don't know. They've been around for a long time, and I think since the early '90s. Julia Child helped start the James Beard Foundation because she was friends with James Beard. James Beard was really the first celebrity chef. He used to be on the Today Show occasionally, but very flamboyant, very overweight, in the closet. Sadly, I have not read his biography, but I've heard it's an amazing story. But if you saw the series on HBO about Julia Child, there's a character playing James Beard, which I apparently nailed him spot on. Never met him, but yes, he was hugely influential. Had written several cookbooks back in the day. And so Julia Child helped start this foundation in his name, in his Greenwich Village townhouse, which is where the foundation started, which is where the offices are. And so they started these awards in the 90s to recognize, best chefs, best new restaurants, that sort of thing. But they also had journalism awards. So everything from authors who write cookbooks to broadcasters. And yeah, we entered in '95 and we won, and we just kept winning. We won, I think, six Beard Awards in the 8 years we did the Good Eating Show. And then we did Public Radio International, The World, won some stuff for them, and then Public WBEZ Radio. So it was really about production values and content and the kinds of stories you're telling. And I've got them all hung up here in my office, and very proud of them.
There's a method to my madness. The reason that I was asking this is you've won these awards for journalism, and it's not for being a critic. And I'm very curious to know what made you decide in your career to go, I'm not necessarily here to tell you what's wrong with this place. I want to celebrate what makes it great. And you've won awards for this. And that's kind of, that is special because a lot of people can win awards for being, this place was terrible. The eggs were this, whatever. You win them for going, this place is great. Here's why you should come here. And I would just like to know what brought you to that decision to not be.
It wasn't really conscious. I mean, there are Beard Awards for criticism, but my job has never been about being a critic because I'm totally in front of the camera. I mean, I don't really realize this, but back in the day, not that long ago, critics used to be anonymous. My friend Tom Sietsema at the Washington Post is still anonymous. But a lot of critics like Adam Platt, New York Magazine, or most recently Louisa Chu and Nick Kindlesberger, when they started at the Tribune as tandem critics, Nick has since left, they were very much on camera or in front of, their pictures were out there. So my job was always as a reporter, and when I was doing the Good Eating show, I'm basically translating the Tribune's food section. There wasn't. This is so weird. The restaurant reviews were not in the Good Eating section. They were in, I think, like the Thursday or the Friday section, which is so strange to me. I would have changed that. And then when I left CLTV, I pitched myself as a food reporter, right? Because I wanted to tell people about this ingredient or this dish or this restaurant or this cuisine. And so you're right. To be a critic, it involves, I think, being anonymous, visiting at least two, if not three times. I think three is kind of the minimum to be a respected critic. You have to get a sense for the service, the consistency, the food quality. You can't just go once. That is not a way to review a restaurant. So I just knew that with budget and with time, that was not going to be even remotely possible. And it doesn't interest me. I mean, I'm a storyteller. I'm a reporter. I'm interested in telling you a story about a place, about an ingredient, about how a dish is made. So criticism was never really on the table for me.
And then when you are, obviously we have the James Beard and then you have the Michelin stars and the Michelin Guide. When you are in a different city, do you look at restaurants who have either won awards or had chefs that have previously won awards? Like, does that play into where you want to make a reservation?
Yeah, it certainly is more than a grain of salt, right? I think that I look at things, is there consistency? Can I triangulate between a Beard winner, maybe a Bon Appetit Best New Restaurant, an Esquire Best New Restaurant, or a Michelin star? I'll see if they get mentioned frequently, and then that might determine if I'm going to go try it for sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with all the Michelin star stuff. I don't know how they review places or inspect places. They tend to get it wrong oftentimes, but if they mention a place like Galit is a bib gourmand, right? It's not a star, but Galit's a great Middle Eastern restaurant, food of the Levant, as they say. And Zach has won a James Beard Award for Rising Star Chef when he was at Shaya in New Orleans before he came to Chicago. And then I see they get a nomination or a Jean Blanchet nomination, which is a local Chicago thing. Then I would make a decision to go eat in that restaurant for sure. Or I just reach out to colleagues of mine in other cities. Hey, tell me where to go eat. I've got friends now in most of the major cities, and I will ask them point blank, like, give me your top three. I want Thai, I want Japanese, and I want sushi.
So obviously everything has changed from just like first it was newspapers, everyone was subscribed, like paper, then we moved to the internet, and now social media has come about. And you have a lot of individuals who they have a following and they gain the following and they give their opinions on where to go for food. Do you follow any of them? What are your thoughts on it? Because obviously it's similar to what you do, but they're
Yeah.
just on their phones. And sometimes I feel like they'll make a recommendation, I'll try it, and I'm like, why did you say this was the place to go? Were you getting paid? I'm just not
Well,
really sure.
that's exact. You just hit it right on the head at the end. Were you paid? Was it free? And so you have to ask that question. And now no one ever asks that question in the comments. And I know no one ever lists in the post itself in the caption if it was comped or if it was. Now, in the last couple of days, Prince Street Pizza has opened up in Chicago here. And you see the same six people have posted from Prince Street how great it is because it was free. I mean, they invited me to come. I mean, I'm not going to go. I'm going to go some other time and pay for it. Um, you know, and when I was at ABC, NBC, they give me a dining budget. That helps a lot. I don't feel I don't feel like when I go to a place and I'm paying for it, I don't feel like I've got to cover it if I don't like it. Most of the places I visit, I just tend not to cover because they're not that exciting. So, yeah. So my response to you is I would say I do look at some people, but I really take it with a grain of salt because I can tell it's always, not to be a dick, but it's always a young woman between 22 and 28 typically, and they haven't had a ton of eating experience. If you're gonna talk about sushi, for example, you probably should have spent some time in Japan or LA, eating sushi. at a proper sushi ya. So yeah, they're young and they're really energetic, and I appreciate what they're doing. But like I know that 9 times out of 10 it was comped or they were paid to be there. And frankly, if you're paid to be there, you've got to disclose that it was an ad. Um, when I left ABC, I had a 5 month window before I went to NBC, and I got hired by a couple of companies. A sauce company, Shan Sauces, hired me to do something about cooking with their sauces because I tried them and I liked them. And I said in the post, hashtag partner, hashtag ad. You got to do that. And I know a lot of people in Chicago do not do that, which is a problem. And so, yeah, so I take it with a grain of salt. I look at what they're doing. I'm like, oh, a Peruvian place opened up on the north side, and then the food kind of looks good. Yeah, I might go check it out. But to your point, what you said, you went to a place that somebody recommended, and it wasn't, why did you recommend it? Well, you answered the question yourself, probably.
It's funny because it's the difference between being amateur and professional and knowing about, how to properly cover a restaurant versus I turned on my phone.
And to add to that, when you said versus professional versus an amateur, so on Sunday night I went to a place out in Niles called Jin Su, best Korean barbecue in Chicago. I'm going to do a story on it in a few weeks. I said in the caption, I'm pretty sure you're going to see breathless accounts pretty soon from both the pros and the influencers. The people who are sort of paid to do it for a living and the people who are, hobbyists. They're both going to go out there, and some are going to try to get a freebie, and some are going to contact the restaurant. And here's what they're going to say: they're going to say, "Your restaurant looks great. I'd love to collaborate with you." And collaborating with you just means I want to come in and I want you to buy me dinner or pay me to be there. But yeah, there are pros and there are amateurs.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about when we were getting ready for this show, you have turned your your book. Wow. Your Pizza City USA. It's become now you have a Pizza City Fest. And I just checked, by the way, because I've been checking your website getting ready for this. And I guess in the last 24 hours, you announced your Chicago dates, which are August 29th, 30th, and 31st. That's still your deal, right?
You're very good, sir. I just updated that yesterday because we are having conversations now with our production company. Nothing is signed yet. And we're talking to a venue. Nothing is signed yet. But those are the dates we are holding for the third Pizza City Fest. We took 2024 off because we launched in Nashville. And frankly, because I just wasn't happy with the venues or the production quality in Chicago. And we also do LA still. So we want to bring it back this year. Yeah, Labor Day weekend. We want to do 3 days and make it a music festival and a pizza festival. Now that Pitchfork is gone, we think there might be an opportunity to jump into that and have some really good bands and maybe like do a $20 ticket to get in and then just a la carte. You pay for the pizzas you want because people in Chicago did not like an all-inclusive, all-you-can-eat situation. And it works in LA, doesn't work here, but that's fine. So we're making adjustments, and I think that's going to be how it's going to work. We'll probably have a little bit fewer pizzerias each day. Maybe instead of 20 a day, we would have typically 40 over the weekend. Now we'll probably do 16 a day, but have 48 over 3 days.
Just to do the professional bit, I just want to make sure we go through and do all your dates. It's Chicago, August Labor Day weekend. You have Los Angeles, April 26th through the 27th this year. Nashville, October 19th and the 20th.
No, Nashville was last year.
I misread the dates from last year. I'll just edit that part out.
That's okay, but we're still talking about Nashville potentially for the fall.
I just moved from Nashville.
Really? You moved from there?
Yeah, I did not like it. I'll put that out there. I was not a fan. Didn't think the food was that great.
Yep.
I didn't find there was a lot to do besides drinking. I'm not a country person, like music person. I was bored. I played a lot of golf and got real good again. I know that Let Us Entertain You is opening up down there. I know like some other restaurants or Momofuku, I believe, is opening up down there by Soho House. They don't have a Sweetgreen there, but they're getting a Hermes store. That doesn't make sense. I just felt like, given how everyone is moving there, especially from California and New York, like the food scene would have been more elevated. And for what the costs are when you go to a restaurant, I thought it was basic.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's a challenging market for us. We don't have to talk a lot about Nashville because it's a Chicago show, but it is challenging. Their football is a distraction, concerts are a distraction. You know, when we did our event, there was Post Malone, there was Jason Isbell, there was college football. It was just, and people in Nashville wait to the last minute to decide to do something. So we had very few advanced ticket sales. It was a little too stressful. So if we go back, we'll partner with AEG, which is our partner in LA. They're building a complex there, and we'll do it on the river, and we'll shrink it.
Lastly, before we get into our speed rounds, we want to be really mindful of your time. What are two or three restaurants that are on your brain lately that you've either tried that you would recommend or that you're excited about their opening?
I love Maxwell's Trading. Uh,
So
West
good.
Loop, so good. Yeah, I've been there a couple times. Really love Maxwell's Trading. It's a nice comeback for Erling Wubauer, who used to be at Pacific Standard Time. So I love I love what they're doing. Um, Bracero had a good meal. I think Bracero's a little on the expensive side, but the food is outstanding. John Mannion, very well respected local chef. Brazilian themed in West Town, not far from your Lao Peng Yu, actually. And let's see, in terms of opening, oh, there's a great little neighborhood place called Mr. Tiger that's going to open in a week or two here at the end of January. Korean restaurant in what is really kind of a mini, little Italy. Grand Avenue between Ogden and May Street. You know, there's Salerno's, D'Amato's, Bari, uh, um, Gemma, the pasta place, and now Pizza Michi. And so Mr. Tiger is going to open up on the corner. It used to be a pork chop barbecue, and they're going to do home style Korean food. And I got to look at the menu already, and it looks great. So as you can tell, I'm kind of a freak for Korean food, but I'm excited about Mr. Tiger.
I have to, as a son of the country of Greece and the grandson of many diner owners, I have to ask, do you have a Greek diner recommendation that you would say is great for going to a nice breakfast?
Oh man, no.
Oh,
I I don't eat a lot of I don't go out for breakfast at all. I think it's such a tourist thing. Or I used to go out for brunch, but I think I'm not paying $15 for eggs. I just don't eat a lot of breakfast. I mean, I would send someone to Lou Mitchell's, right? That's kind of the classic Chicago place.
place.
I, I I mean, that diner burned. Didn't that diner over by the UC on Madison close?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a great place, but I don't really know where else to go for breakfast. Sorry.
That's all right. I am a breakfast person. I feel it's the
Okay.
most to eat out, but that's because I'm a simple eater. That's why I know nothing about anything you guys have talked about.
What about White Palace Grill?
There you go. Dang, that works.
Yeah.
But simple.
There's a 24-hour diner I'm actually curious about at the corner of Orleans and Chicago. I think it's called like 24 or diner or something. 24
I,
hour diner.
yeah, it's right on the corner because it's next to Bounce, like the nightclub, if that's what it's still called.
Yes, of
And
course
so
Mallory knows that. Yeah.
at like 2 a.m. it's the diners popping. But
Yeah.
we have really good grilled cheeses late night.
Okay. Oh, good to know. All right.
Yeah.
Did you say you're
I
in Chicago or you're in New York now?
I'm in New York. I'm flying back to Chicago tonight. I come back a lot. I would run back to Chicago if I could. My job keeps me first in Nashville, and then luckily I was able to get out, and now I'm in New York. But everyone's asking me, am I loving the food in New York? I'm like, there's so many places. It's kind of hard, and the places you really want to go to try to get a reservation, it's wild. And I was like, where's the good Mexican food? And they're like, you gotta go up to like the Bronx or in different areas. I'm like, okay.
It's
So
funny.
I'm Go
Somebody
ahead.
said the Frontera Grill would do well there because there's nothing like middle priced.
There's nothing. And
Yeah.
like Mexican food here in Manhattan is
Yeah.
subpar.
If
Sorry.
you, I'm going to Cocodoc in 2 weeks for the
Oh,
fried chicken and champagne.
oh, nice. Yeah. I'm going tomorrow night. I have reservations at Daisy's. And then I'm gonna go to Chef's Special while I'm there. I
Oh,
like,
good call.
yeah. I mean, Giant's always a good call too. Great restaurant for ramen. I love wasabi. Um,
I would recommend Akahoshi. If you can get into Akahoshi, that is the best ramen.
okay, I'm gonna try it and I'll let you know.
It's on California, just south of Fullerton, across the street from Pretty Cool Ice Cream.
Oh, I've been there twice, actually. Now I didn't recognize the name. They opened like what, a
Year and change ago. Yeah.
year twice, both times. The person I went with, who is a big ramen eater, both of us were not like surprised by it. We just were like, did we do something wrong? Because everyone we know loves it.
Hmm.
We two separate times ordered different things, and we both were like, I like wasabi better.
Okay.
I,
But
I feel like
it's got to
I feel
be
like
us. It's got to be us at this point because everyone is talking about how much they love it there.
I feel like so there are times when people talk. You have to have people talk to you about food, and you just have this moment of, yeah, sure. You're just completely, totally wrong. But I'm going to sit here and smile because I can't criticize everyone all the time.
Right. Right.
But then
I,
it,
I, I mean, listen, I don't want to impose my taste on anybody, right? If it's like, if that's what you don't like, that's fine. But I mean, they're not known for tonkotsu ramen, which I think Wasabi does better. They're known for that sort of Sapporo style ramen, and he also does a dry noodle one, like a dan dan noodle almost.
I think next time if I go there, I'm going to try the dry one. That's like the one I haven't really
Yeah,
explored.
try
But either way,
that.
I love like the flavors of ramen and like of Asian cuisine. So Chicago, I'm excited to come home in a few hours. But we end every episode with a speed round of questions. So I'm curious on your take. So Cubs or Sox?
Cubs
Tavern style pizza or deep dish?
Tavern.
Ketchup on a hot dog, yes or no?
No, come on, what the hell.
just wrong. Just wrong. It's fine.
Favorite neighborhood in Chicago?
Uh, Logan Square.
Favorite season in Chicago?
Spring. No,
Why?
let me change that. I'm going to say summer.
Okay. Any particular reason or
Spring is messy and dirty, and it gives me the promise and the optimism of a change in the season that we're going to finally get the hell out of winter. But in itself, in the season, it's not pleasant enough, and the real pleasant in Chicago is the summer.
72 and sunny in Chicago is why you put up with every other bad weather day because there is nowhere else on earth that is better than 72 and sunny in Chicago.
I'm on my bike pretty much every day from like May through September.
and then lastly, why do you love Chicago?
Because you can afford to live here, because you can afford to own property, you can go out to eat, you can see theater, you can have cultural experiences, you can do everything you can do in any other city in America, but you can do it more affordably. Now, it's getting harder, as I've noticed. I lived in the city for 30 years, but it's still affordable and livable with all the problems that we have as a big city. Because I've been to the other cities and I could not afford to live in those places. I don't know how people do it. I don't want to live in a shoebox. I mean, I live in a house. So I live in a condominium now, but I used to live in a house. And I like that people here are super friendly and willing to share and willing to, they're patient. And people like to eat here too. That's why I like it here.
Steve, thank you so much for chatting with us. Please know you're always welcome to come back if maybe before pizza, like your big pizza event in August, we'll have you on and we can talk more about it. Especially we can highlight some of the different restaurants that are going to be featured to kind of give them plugs as
Yeah,
well. We just really appreciate you and everything you've done for the Chicago food scene. So thank you so much.
my pleasure. Thank you guys. Loved chatting with you.